Chairman Mark Green is with us. He, by the way, is also an MD. He's from Tennessee. I got to give you and I got to give your fellow Republicans in the House a good amount of credit. I know you don't have a big majority. This was not a light lift, but it's the right thing to do. And I don't really care what happens in the Senate. That should not influence what the House does. If a person deserves to be impeached for dereliction of duty, for not upholding the laws of this land, and frankly, for aiding and abetting in the law breaking, which happened, they should be held accountable. Anyway, Homeland Security Committee Chair Mark Green, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Sean. And thank you for being a voice of all of this over the past years. Getting the American people aware of what's going on has helped us achieve what we did yesterday.
Well, okay, let's talk about the reasons, the whys, the wherefores. I don't know about you. Do you have any kids, Doctor?
I do. I have a son and a daughter.
All right. If you're like me, do you get more angry at whatever silly thing they did wrong, or do you get more angry when they look you in the eye and they said, I swear, Dad, I didn't eat the cookie. And then you look at their face and you see nothing but chocolate chip cookie all over it. You get more mad when they lie or more mad at the silly things kids always do?
It's the dishonesty, right, that we pound into kids to be honest people. And Mayorkas has come before the Congress and blatantly lied. He's lied to the American people just 100+ times. The whipping incident, which was an absolute lie. He's broken the trust of the American people. He's broken the trust, the breach of trust, and that's exactly what the founders intended for high crimes and misdemeanors.
But, Congressman, isn't the biggest lie what they've told us for 3 years? They've insisted that the border's closed, the border's secure. And meanwhile, I have eyes to see. I have a television program that we can actually show videotape. And for 3 years, we've been showing the American people how bad it is down at our border. Now the estimate is somewhere around 10 million illegal Joe Biden immigrants in this country, including from countries like Iran and Syria and Egypt, home of the Muslim Brotherhood, home of Al-Qaeda is Afghanistan, over 6,000 from there. These people from Iran, the number one state sponsor of terror, and then tens of thousands from Russia, our number two geopolitical foe, and over 37,000, the latest estimate, from China, our number one geopolitical foe. Do you think they're coming here because they want better lives, or do you think that maybe amongst that population, there's probably a few people that have bad intentions for our country?
Well, it's real easy to see China. I mean, the social credit score over there doesn't allow a Chinese person to climb on an airplane and fly to Ecuador or El Salvador and then walk up. I mean, you can't do that without the government knowing. And 19,000 since October 1, and 28,000 last year, and the highest number before that ever on record, 1,800. So that massive spike in the past year and a half has to be programmed. Now, is it sabotage if we go to war to defend Taiwan? Is it something else? I don't know. But any military general who couldn't figure this one out would be fired on day one.
Okay. It's that transparent. It's that obvious for anybody with eyes to see. But they've lied to us for 3 years. Now Mayorkas is saying we don't bear responsibility for the broken border system, or Joe Biden saying I've done everything I can do with the border. Just give me the power. Well, he didn't need the power when he rescinded the stay in Mexico policy, when he rescinded a border wall construction, and when he did a lot of other things as well, pretty much rescinded every Trump immigration policy that, in fact, was working. So for him to, peddle that lie, echoed by the media mob, infuriates me also.
Yeah, that is insanity. 67 exact policies were undone as soon as they came into office. Executive orders undoing either executive orders or regulations done by the department. And they flipped the system on its head, where the system is designed to stop and detain everybody who comes in, and when resources get, exhausted, then you can issue parole on a case-by-case basis. America's designed whole systems to allow for huge groups of people to be automatically paroled into the country, subverting the laws written by Congress. And as far as I'm concerned, He's breaking his oath to defend the Constitution, because it's clear Congress writes the law and the executive branch executes the law. And if you go back to Iran-Contra, where the Democrats were trying to hold Reagan accountable, they actually say in their report, you don't get to pick and choose which laws you follow. And so we just have been throwing that back in their face. Of course, they vote their ideology. They don't vote right or wrong. And so, of course, the vote was what it was. But Mayorkas is a liar. He lied to Congress. He lied to the American people. He's breaking the laws. He's subverting the laws, and he's damaging the Constitution.
Well, let me ask you this simple, basic question: if I went down to the southern border, and I picked up people at that border, and I said, well, I'm going to give you 43 cities to choose from. And by the way, here is a debit card worth, whatever amount of money, because I know the Bidens have given out over $1 billion on top of free transportation to any one of 43 locations. And even more than that, because it's spread out. Every city, every town now is a border town, border city. And if I went down to the border and I picked people up and said, where would you like to go? Do you think I'd be violating the laws of our land? And would I not be potentially arrested for human trafficking and smuggling? Wouldn't I be committing a crime? And if the answer is yes, which I know it is, but I'll let you answer. I don't want to put words in your mouth. If that means I would get arrested, why is Joe institutionalized aiding and abetting in the law breaking? Why has he gotten away with aiding and abetting in the law breaking? I'd like to know why that happened.
Yeah, the challenge with the aiding and abetting is showing intent for the outcome. So let's say if you were going to say we charge him, and we looked at that, Sean, aiding and abetting the drug cartels for trafficking or human trafficking, you have to show intent, and that requires you can infer intent, and I'm willing to infer intent right now, because that's they know what's happening, and they've chosen to only double down on those same policies. But that it wouldn't qualify for the elements of the crime. And so,
let me ask you this: but the law that you're referring to, don't they have specific provisions in there about transporting illegal immigrants?
They do, and that could be a crime. What you described could very well be a crime under certain circumstances, depending on, like, for example, if you ask the person, and they're inside the United States now, so we're talking about already in the U.S. If you go into Mexico and do it, it's absolutely human trafficking. If you do it from inside the U.S., they're here, and they say, yeah, take me there, and they give you a signature saying you can give somebody a ride inside the country. But if you bring them across that border, that's a crime.
That to me is a no-brainer. What frustrates me the most, I'm not against immigration, and I know there's a term that the left and the mob and the media, they like to use, and they call it, I don't even know what the hell they're talking about half the time, because I don't pay attention to idiocy, and mostly what I hear from pundits on television and people that write for the New York Times or Washington Post is just total crap and BS. And they're just a bunch of partisan hacks. But the term they like to use is the replacement theory. Let me be very clear. I don't care who comes to this country. I think we have to limit the number of people that come. I don't care where you come from, but I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for a background check to see that you don't have radical associations, or a health check in a post-COVID-19 world, or that you have to show an ability that you will be able to financially sustain yourself without being a burden on the American people. Are those requirements too stringent, Congressman?
No.
I don't think so. I think they're very reasonable.
They're written into the law, Sean, and they are. In fact, this is the smoking gun. Mayorkas wrote a memorandum in September, I think, of 21, that directed ICE to disregard the law that said if they're a criminal alien, they have to be detained. This is a person who's committed a felony. So if they find out that they've got a felony, they're not detaining them now by directive from the secretary, contrary to the laws passed by Congress. And what's really interesting about our immigration laws, they don't, nowhere in the law does it say, DOJ, you shall prosecute every murderer. In the immigration law, it says you shall detain every felon that comes across that border. And Mayorkas directed them in a memorandum to break the law.
officially, you have pointed out that Secretary Mayorkas has willfully and systematically refused to comply with the laws of this country and breached the public trust. And all of that is true. Look, I don't think there's any chance. I'm not even sure they'll have a trial in the Senate because Democrats, rule the roost there. And I think Republicans in the Senate, half of them are a bunch of rhinos and they're weak. And frankly, the fact that they don't embrace this as a top campaign issue is unbelievable to me because the American people have made it their top campaign issue. So, but regardless of that, it shouldn't stop the House from doing the right thing. You do the right thing and you don't worry about the outcome. And for that, I applaud all the Republicans that stuck together on this. And I know there were 3 defections, Gallagher and McClintock and what's his name, Ken Buck from Colorado. It's frustrating to me. What part of this argument did they not like?
Those guys, voiced a higher standard for high crimes and misdemeanors that I think is just totally wrong. I think they had to have dreamed it up very clearly. I mean, if you look at Madison, who wrote the Constitution, by the way, he was elected to the House and was basically debating the formation of what would become the State Department. And there's this discussion about, well, what happens if we form this and a secretary gets in there and he's a bad person? And Madison says words to this effect: if an unworthy president appoints an unworthy person to office, we'll impeach him. So it's not about elements of a crime having to do, they didn't even have a criminal code back then, hardly. So this idea that the guy has to commit some kind of crime and meet the elements of a crime is false, and it's not historically accurate, and they clung to that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I want to just say I applaud all your efforts. I'm glad most of the Republican conference got together on this. The other one thing I'd like to see them exert some control over, if they can get everybody to unite. It's a little more difficult today after the race in New York, but that would be the budget. I think Republicans need to leverage everything they've got to try and get spending under control. All those things, the border and the budget, need to be the top priorities before they start, sending another $75 billion to Ukraine and other foreign aid issues. I'm not saying they're not important issues. They certainly need to be debated. There's got to be a limit. Europe has not done their fair share as far as I'm concerned in Europe, but, we could discuss all that for another day. Do you have any idea? Do you think the Senate takes it up, or you don't have a guess?
I don't have a guess. If I had a guess, they're going to either not take it up at all or make it something very quick and short, because every time we get up and talk about what's happening at the southern border, they're not going to take it up, or they're going to make it a very short procedure.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but that does not negate the efforts that you guys put in, and I think you did the right thing. Anyway, Congressman, medical doctor Mark Green, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee from Tennessee. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being with us.